Good evening and Happy New Year. Welcome to 2024. This Town of Adams Board of Selectmen meeting for Wednesday, January 3rd, 2024 is now called to order. If you could all please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right. Excellent. All right. So the first order of business before the board is the approval of minutes. And in our materials, we have the December 20th, 2023 meeting minutes. What is the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to waive the reading of the minutes for December 20th, 2023 for approval.
I second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes.
No discussion, but I'm not sure. I know where the change I'm looking for, but I believe that it was John Duval that made that there was 2 adjournments, and I think it was credited to me that there were 2 adjournments within the packet.
Okay.
And that should be changed to Member Duval. And on page 4, under Subcommittee and Liaison Reports, Member Novak was asked to be the chairman of the Mohawk Woodlands Partnership. That's incorrect. I've been asked to be the chairman of the Budgeting and Finance portion subcommittee of the Mohawk Woodlands Partnership, or Partnership of Northwest Massachusetts, hopefully soon.
Joe, what was the subcommittee again?
Budgeting and Finance.
Chairman of the Budgeting and Finance Committee.
Subcommittee.
Sorry, thank you.
Madam Chair, I'll amend my motion to include those changes.
Okay. Howard, do you second?
Second.
Anything else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. Thank you. Next item is public comment. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to the board? Yes, if you could please come forward and state your name and your address. Hi.
Hi, I'm Caroline, Scholar 7. My understanding is there won't be a comment period or a question period between the executive session and the potential approval of the lease with shared estates.
Okay.
So I'm asking my questions now.
Sure.
I want to know how many years the lease will be for, what the payment amount will be to the town from shared estates, what the timeline is, and whether there's a way to end the lease if the funding isn't, if shared estates is not able to raise the funding that they need for the project, or if the project doesn't seem to be happening. And then just a comment, I think that the shared estates project is lodging, not rustic camping. And I don't think it belongs in that location. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So will you be able to answer my questions now, or should I wait till later?
I can't
Okay. Thank you.
at this time. It's part of our executive session. But thank you for the questions. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. All right. That'll bring us to new business. The first item under new business is a compliance report from Animal Control Officer regarding the dangerous dog located at 12 Phillips Hill. Animal Control Officer Whittick was unable to attend this evening. However, through the chief, she did send photos of the kennel. When the board last met and reviewed the items on December 20th, we saw the intent to purchase a kennel, but the dog owners, Ms. Canada and Mr. Vega, had until December 20th to have it installed. Upon her inspection today, she did indicate that there's not a floor with the kennel, which is one of the items that was required by this board. And although the chief's email states that there's a vet appointment that has been provided to us regarding the dog being neutered, that has not yet been provided. So at this time, I'm looking at a couple of items that are still not in compliance, and I'm asking if the board would be comfortable moving forward with an official public hearing with Mr. Vega and Ms. Canada on January 17th to review all of the compliance orders.
Madam Chair, I'm okay with that. I think it might be a good idea to have a final closeout meeting of all of the requirements that they've signed up for. So we might as well just take care of that at the next meeting
Okay.
and invite the chief and the animal control officer to support any discussions.
Okay.
My recommendation.
Howard, Joe, are you comfortable with the January 17th public hearing?
I'll have to say I'm not adverse to it, but I think that when we made our decision, we were crystal clear on the times and dates when they should comply.
Mm-hmm.
But sure, have them back in, but don't want this to continue on and on, because as the deciding board, we shouldn't allow things to go much longer.
Yep.
Or any longer.
Great.
Okay. So we will move forward with the process of scheduling an official public hearing for January 17th. We will send that certified mail to the dog owners and let them know that they can have legal representation with them if they so choose, and we will also make sure that our attorney is present. And we have a friend who is on the table who's providing a distraction. It's just an ant. But he's made his way down the table. Sorry.
Is that a good omen, or what is that?
Sure. I'm not sure, but he's, he'll hang out. It's fine. That was my distraction over here. My apologies. If everyone's like, what's she doing? That's what it is. All right. So that'll take care of item A. So we're going to move on to new business item B. And Mr. Green, I will turn it over to you to introduce our guests who are here to present.
Thank you, Chairperson Hoyt. While Becky and her team comes up and moves over here, I will set the stage just to remind everybody, one of the issues that we, maybe not so much an issue, but one of the contextual issues that we have with the Greylock Glen is, because it's essentially a municipal project, everything moves slow. Everything is very slow. You talk about something for a period of time, and then there's weeks or months of silence, and all of a sudden it pops back up. Well, that's what's happening tonight. So I'm just going to refresh where everybody was. The outdoor center has always been designed to be occupied by two, in particular, operators. One being the educational programming provider and the restaurant operator. So in order to occupy the building, once we're going through the process of building it, the town has to put out an RFP, request for proposals, allow the public to compete in order to operate out of public space. So we did that for the educational programming provider. Mass Audubon was the respondent to that. And the process of which we did was we had an internal group that met with Mass Audubon, met with the team, met with the staff, went through their proposal. There was no other, normally you listen to others, you'd whittle that list down and then either make a presentation to the board and have the board do it, or the recommending body would just recommend one to the board. We don't have that issue. Mass Audubon was the only respondent. And in front of you, what the board has is a memorandum from the Greylock Glen Outdoor Center Environmental Education Provider Selection Committee, and that essentially highlights the reasons why we're recommending tonight to the board that Mass Audubon be chosen as the educational provider at the Greylock Glen. This is, let's make no bones about it, this is an important night for the town of Adams, for Mass Audubon. Donna Season couldn't join us tonight, but I asked her today if there was one thing that she wanted me to relay to everybody about Mass Audubon tonight, and that was, please express her enthusiasm for this, and that we have waited a long time, because Mass Audubon, unbeknownst to a lot of folks, have been with the visioning for the Greylock Glen right from the beginning. So when the town took control over the property, it was named as the master developer for economic development purposes. Mass Audubon has always been a partner with the town of Adams going forward to really flush out what's the highest and best use of that property. In addition to them being a part of that visioning process, they've always said, we really want to be the educational provider up there. They stay true to their word, and they're here tonight. So the board has that memo in front of you, which is really just an abstract giving everybody the reasons why. Becky and her team are going to present to you a slideshow. I hope everybody at home and in the audience is able to listen and understand why we're recommending that Mass Audubon be that provider. The board has in front of them both the RFP that the town put out and the response materials from Mass Audubon. And without risk of delaying this any further, Becky, I'm going to turn it over to Dale and Stephen and you guys and go at it.
Wonderful. Can we just point to you
Yeah, if
with
you
a
want to give me some sort of nod or.
little point?
Yeah.
Okay, and as you start, if you could actually introduce yourselves so that we know who's speaking and.
Absolutely. I think we can introduce all three of ourselves
Great.
now. My name is Stephen Hutchinson. I am the Senior Regional Director for Mass Audubon, overseeing the central and western portions of the state, basically everything from Worcester west.
Thank you, Stephen.
And my name is Becky Cushing-Gopp, and I'm the Regional Director for Mass Audubon's Western Region, so the 4 counties in the west.
And I'm Dale Abrams, Regional Education Manager for the West Region as well. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you so much. So as Mr. Green stated, Mass Audubon is extremely excited about this opportunity. It's been something we've been working towards along with the town of Adams for many, many years. And we feel that Mass Audubon is uniquely fit to provide this environmental education, conservation, and climate awareness to the people that come to visit Greylock Glen, both from the state of Massachusetts and beyond. So we're very excited. What we would like to do is just give a brief overview for those of you that aren't aware of Mass Audubon and some of what our organization does across the state here in the Berkshires, and also focusing a little more on the education and educational programming that we provide across the state, and we hope to provide out of Greylock Glen Center. So just briefly at a glance, Mass Audubon is a amazing organization with over 160,000 member households across, well, beyond across the state of Massachusetts. And at our sites across the state, we have over 725,000 people that come and visit our sites, participate in programs, including school programs, camps, and so forth. We would not be able to do the work that we do without our extensive volunteers. We have more volunteers that come and help us do our work and work towards our mission than most other organizations in the state. I think we're ranked number 2 in that category. And what we do well. We protect land. We're currently protecting over 41,000 acres of land across the state, most of which is considered wildlife sanctuary. And we provide access to that acreage as well through an extensive trail system, including over 210 miles of trails that we manage. Of those trails, we have 16 trails currently across the state that are called all-persons trails. These are trails that anybody can come use regardless of if they're in a wheelchair, if they're blind, if they're deaf. We have different combinations to make sure that everybody can get out and enjoy nature. Over the next 3 years, we hope to take that number from 16 trails up to 25. So that is a very important part of our work. And to do this work, depending on the time of year, we can have upwards of 600 staff that are working at Mass Audubon, some of which are part-time, many of which are seasonal, as we do run summer camps across the state. Our mission, in its simplest terms, is to protect the nature of Massachusetts for people and wildlife, and we do that through a number of different ways. We've been doing that since 1896, when our organization was founded, and a few years later opened up our first sanctuary in Sharon, Massachusetts, Moose Hill Wildlife Sanctuary. And we reach our mission through education, through conservation, through advocacy, and through land protection. And there's a lot of benefits to the work that we're doing. If you, and I don't think I'm preaching to the choir here, but the benefits of protecting nature, including carbon sequestration, providing clean air and water to our citizens, providing a chance for physical and mental health, as well as supporting the importance of biodiversity here in Massachusetts and the entire New England area. Right now, we're going through a thing that we call our action agenda. We're right in the middle of it, and our action agenda speaks to three main goals that we have in this organization because we feel they are all pressing and need to be addressed here in Massachusetts. One is protecting and stewarding a resilient landscape, making sure that we're not only protecting those acreage, but we're also managing it in a way that it benefits wildlife and people and handles the change that is coming with climate change. We want to make sure that people have access to that nature. We want to be inclusive and make sure that people can get out and enjoy the beauties of nature here in Massachusetts. And lastly, but equally as important, is mobilizing the fight to minimize the damage of climate change. You can see here on our map, we have sanctuaries and properties that we manage throughout the state, and we're very excited at the opportunity to have one here in Adams, partnering with the town of Adams at Greylock Glen. You'll see that we have a lot that is happening here in the Berkshires, and I'm going to turn it over to Becky to go into a little more detail on that.
Yeah, if we're still on that map slide, one thing to just point out is that the situation at Greylock Glen would not be unique. We have other places, for instance, Magazine Beach here is designated as one of our partner properties. So that's an example of a place where we don't own the land or the building, but we are the education provider. So we do have a depth of experience in this kind of arrangement. So why Mass Audubon at Greylock Glen Outdoor Center? Well, for one, the integration of conservation, education, and outdoor recreation that's so key and at the forefront of our work is also the intention behind Greylock Glen Outdoor Center. It's already, the conservation already happened, and so the education and the opportunities for outdoor recreation and the expansion on that is something that aligns so strongly with our mission and our work. And Stephen already mentioned climate change. Climate change is it permeates everything that we do. It is addressed through every single one of our action agenda goals. And we see this outdoor center as a place where we're not only educating the public through programming, but there'll be interpretive displays, and there are ways for us to talk about things like nature-based climate solutions and how people can actually get involved to mobilize and fight climate change. We're really excited about that. We have such a depth of experience working with, partnering with communities in the Berkshires. So 8+ decades of working in schools, working with community centers, working with libraries, and having our sanctuaries over 90 years old down in Lenox, Pleasant Valley Wildlife Sanctuary. We have demonstrated commitments to these places through the long duration of partnership, the scholarship that we offer, all the ways that we work alongside communities to carry out our mission. And these next two slides just sort of show from a geographic perspective where we're working, where sanctuaries are located. You can see that we do have 6 sanctuaries in the Berkshires. Many of you may know Pleasant Valley Wildlife Sanctuary is our oldest sanctuary. It's where we have our current nature center. You may know Canoe Meadows Wildlife Sanctuary, where we don't have buildings, but we have many of trails and we operate programs. There are, as Stephen already mentioned, 100+ wildlife sanctuaries across the state, and you can see what we have locally here. Even just over the border out of the Berkshires, we have many, many sanctuaries where we do programming. You can go to the next slide. And just to demonstrate one of the examples of committed partnership with communities, this slide depicts where we're working with schools. Our Berkshire Environmental Literacy Program is one of the longest running in-school science programs in the county. And you can see the number of students, the number of classes, and the blue stars show where our wildlife sanctuaries are. The red stars show the participating schools. So you can see we're already up here in Adams, and we love that partnership. And we see that as just one of the ways that we'll continue the work that we're doing and build upon it through the Greylock Glen Outdoor Center. Next slide. And I'm turning it over to Dale to get into some of those specifics.
Thanks, Becky. What I hope to do in the next few slides is give you more of a visual picture of what we hope to have happening at Greylock Glen and out in the communities around the Glen. In this slide, you can see some of the audiences we hope to work with at the Glen: families and adults, young children, school-age kids and their teachers, and even possibly in the future having a preschool of some sort located in this area. We run hikes, nature walks, canoe trips, community engagement programs like Becky was mentioning, out where we go out to sites like our libraries, which we've been to in town. And we like to host stewardship events where folks from the community can get involved with the care and stewardship of the properties that we're caring for. Next. Becky alluded to it, but one of our longest relationships with the town of Adams is with the schools in the Adams Cheshire School District. Some of the teachers there we've had relationships with for more than a couple decades. And it's we hope that will become sort of the heart and beginning place where our work launches from. So over these next few slides, that's our starting place. We're there this year. We were just wrapping up in November with a 4-part program with all of the 3rd grade classes there. We'll be doing field trips for them in the springtime. But now we turn to these next few slides, and this is what we hope to see unfolding on the land up there at Greylock Glen. Family programs running all year long: snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, where we're getting out searching for wildlife tracks and learning about trees in winter, summertime and springtime programs to take advantage of learning about the flora and fauna when they're more visible those times of year, and perhaps even leading hikes to the top of the mountain. Next slide. Adult programs like family programs can happen any time of year and might involve all the things you see here illustrated in the various seasons: on land, on water, on skis, on snowshoes. Down the road, as things begin to develop further with the facilities up there, as families are staying in the hopefully shared estates facilities there, we'll be able to offer youth programming and perhaps over the years even develop another campsite like we have down in Pittsfield and down in Lenox now. Touching on what I know is so close to the heart of Donna and the town's initiative for this project is thinking about climate. And I want you to know that that's super close, as you heard from Stephen, to the work that we're doing. We run a youth climate leadership program statewide that brings young people who have a passion and concern about the impacts of climate change to learn the skills to become future leaders like you, to help towns and communities in making plans to mitigate the impacts of climate change. We also have a program for adults that's just launched in the last couple of years called our Climate Champions program, where folks from communities like this learn skills to be able to go out and be advocates on Beacon Hill or in their local communities for measures that can help to mitigate those impacts. And alluding back to some things that Stephen mentioned earlier, when we have talked with Donna over the years about sort of how we might be involved, it includes the dimensions of thinking about the future of the trails, additions to the trails that might include accessible boardwalks like you're seeing in these pictures, and interactive exhibits that are out on the trails so someone can stumble into learning opportunities while they're out on the trails without even having to have someone on the ground with them. So interpretive materials that are both tactile and visual as well. So our last slide here is to give you a sense of how things might roll out. We don't have dates across the top because we know that things take time, and we don't know exactly when things will fold out. So across the top, we have sort of the current year, when the outdoor center opens, when all the vendors are in the center, and then when the campground is operating, and when we hope for a future conference center up on the site as well. So you can see the progression of programs. Right now, we're in schools, and during the last 3 years, 2020, 21, 22, we piloted several programs on site at Greylock Glen. There was good involvement from community members in those with just low-key Mass Audubon promotion without even having facilities on site. People loved getting out on the property. They loved learning about birds and trees and other aspects of nature on that site. So we know the potential's there. So you can see as the Outdoor Ed Center opens, the opportunity to pilot more programs and put a sort of full-scale schedule of offerings out there through the seasons. And then as it's fully operational, then beginning to expand those programs and really build out towards a full program scale. And once we have a campground in place, that will allow us to then really build out the youth and family programming during the seasons that folks are there. And once we potentially have a conference center and all those different kinds of facilities there, that will allow us to build out pretty much everything from school programs to adult programs to family, all ages, youth, and camp programs, or other types of youth programs to their full potential. Exact timelines, I know we're all looking for. We'll figure it out. It's going to happen in the next few years. So I'll close by saying we're looking very much forward to working with the town of Adams and with the new administrator for the facility to make this all happen.
Thank you very much.
And we're happy to take questions.
Yes, and we'll get to questions. My first question is more of a technical question. It's a difficult room for people to see the entire presentation. Has that been provided to Bree, that like if somebody asks for a copy of the presentation, she can get that to them?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I'm also looking at our media partners here, and there's some data points that were presented here, and I want to make sure that they are able to get those data points if they should need them for their articles.
Has a copy, digital copy, and we also have, I think, maybe a couple handouts. Are there any handouts?
Yeah, there's a couple handouts as well, so we can do that.
Yeah, I found those. I'm happy to distribute those to folks.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I will open it up to the board to ask any questions of Stephen, Becky, or Dale.
So I agree. We're very fortunate to have Mass Audubon looking to work with the town of Adams. I just have a couple questions for my education in regards to Mass Audubon, because we are signing a legal document here. And so Mass Audubon, is that a independent organization is one question, or is a state support and provide grants, things like that? And the second question is funding for your organization. How do you obtain your funding to be able to offer all these great programs throughout the state?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. So Mass Audubon is independent. We're not part of the state. We're not part of National Audubon. Mass Audubon is the first and Audubon, and so we are a nonprofit. So the ways that we are able to provide these programs and have the funding to do so is a few-fold. We do go for grant opportunities that allow us to do a lot of the work that we're doing. We do have donations that come in from individuals as well as businesses and organizations that will provide funds to allow us to do our work. And we do charge for some of the programming, a lot of the programming that we offer that is not grant supported to allow us to do it. Mass Audubon does have a sizable endowment that also allows us to maintain the staff and maintain the sanctuaries that we are protecting. So it's multifaceted, but it's not part of the state, and it is an independent nonprofit.
Okay, thank you. I may have questions after.
Okay. Howard or Joe?
Yeah, I'm never shy on questions, I guess. First of all, I'd like to thank you for putting your name forward as our member Duval mentioned, you're an exceptional group, certainly in tune with the environment and almost ahead of the environment in some respects, what needs to be done. I'd like to say also that, for instance, our town administrator wears many hats. He was a lawyer, he was a policeman, he was in the military, he worked developing a train station, and he worked on the Chicopee Water Department. So he's a man that wears many hats. And there are also members here that have many talents. I don't probably have as many talents as they do, but one talent I have that I'm very proud of is my concern for the environment. Not to tout my horn or to, put feathers in my cap, but I've been involved with environmental affairs since I've been a very young person. And I'm just going to go through a quick list of what I feel are accomplishments. I first got involved when acid rain came about. I went to Williams College. I didn't attend Williams College, but I worked with a Williams College professor and a chemistry major on getting water samples from the highland ponds of Savoy State Forest for a year and a half, had them analyzed. And after analyzing them, they decided that they needed a slurry of lime in North Pond, which is a kettle pond. And they went up to correct the the pH, so I was quite happy with that. Also, at 22 years of age, I was the co-founder of our Adams Agricultural Fair, which recently closed down. I think we were hit by COVID. We couldn't rebound, but that's always been important to me. The farming is such an important part of my life, and we're fortunate to have still some farms, but not the breadth that I had when I was a young person here in Adams. I formed the first agricultural commission here in Adams, and we got a vote through town meeting members to have a bylaw for the right to farm, which I was happy about. And then the agricultural commission laid to rest. In other words, there was no interest, and myself, along with others, we reinstituted it, and it's up and running now because I think it's very important to protect our farmlands. I was a member of the Adams Conservation Commission for 30 years. When the Conservation Commissions were founded in 1976, I continued on that commission until I ran for the select board and won, so I couldn't stay on because it would have been a conflict of interest. I also worked for DEM and DCR for many, many years. Most of my time was atop Mount Greylock. I worked at the reservation, so I'm very in tune with the reservation and the Glen property. And also, I have a master's degree in environmental science from the University of Idaho, way back in the early 80s, so science changes and people change, and I sure don't look like I did back then. But anyways, I'm happy that you put your name in. Just a few things. Your group was really focused early on ornithology. Your founder, Audubon, was an ornithologist. And the Glen property, I was there when it was deeded over to the reservation. It's a separate entity within the reservation. And one of the first things that was called for by Fish and Game was to come up and cut some of the wooded areas, the hardtack, in other words, so that birds, raptors, and animals had what they need to, for flight and for their ability to eat is wood line along with field. And so I hope that there's some way that can be instituted within the project to somehow either replicate or protect those areas to the best extent you can. Because, and when Rene Labar was with Audubon, I remember him saying the biggest threats to Greylock would be the overuse and development of the property. And so there's a shared vision, I hope, that this is a sensitive property, and I think you all realize it. And things that are done there must protect the environment, because it's not just ours, it's generations for people to come. And I've substituted up at the schools, and I've seen you come into the elementary schools. The kids love you, and they're the future of climate change, because I'm an older man and I'll make it through, but I really worry about what's going to happen in the long run for children in this world, not just in the United States, throughout the whole world. And I have a few more things, but I'm going to just stop now and let other people, and I'll make some final comments at the end. Thank you for listening. Sorry for being long-winded.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you for your presentation. It's clear, and I want to compliment you on the way you thought through finances, very solid. You can describe a combination of resources. And the programming you've are designing the program to match the audience and how it's going to build over time. So I think it's very reasonable and it's commendable. And to echo some of Joe's comments, I'm very, very excited to see this kind of educational programming coming to Adams, because as we're beginning to realize on a broader level, that climate change is the largest existential threat that we face as humanity. And that if Adams can participate in making people more aware of how their behavior affects the environment, and how development can be done in a way that is in harmony with the environment, which is what we're doing with the zero footprint building, which you'll be occupying. So I want to just say that and I've been to earlier presentations and see how well thought through this process is. Like, none of us can guarantee what's going to happen, but if the process is good, the outcome's going to be good. And I really, really like the process, and I wholeheartedly support this program and your involvement in it. Thank you very much.
Mind if I step in for a second?
Sure.
Thank you.
And I'll ask a
Stephen or Becky or Dale, would you mind just commenting a little bit for the board and the public? Your impressions of the building, your thoughts on the space. The educational wing was built specifically with Mass Audubon's input. We had that, conversation at our level. We know where some of the shortcomings may be, but I think it would be nice now that the building is actually there and you've walked through it, and most of these folks have walked through it, this stage. Just maybe comment a little bit on the space itself and how you think that that's going to lend itself to Mass Audubon's presentation. And then, and lastly, and Dale, you did talk about this, and if you could just flesh out a little bit more. The Shared Estates folks happen to be here tonight. We did do this intentionally, try to get it timed correctly, because I really believe it's important that people begin to understand the inextricable, entwinement that we have with your success as an educational provider and having people physically present at the Glen. We know they're there now. We know they're up there, but there's no structure to it. I just think it's important to rehash that a little bit so people understand that really Mass Audubon's success at the Glen Outdoor Center, doing what you do and getting folks access to your programming and what the Glen is also important on some of the other development components up there as well. And I just think it's important to hammer those points a little bit.
Sure, I'm happy to start off.
Thanks, Dale.
My longest relationship with the town of Adams is by coming to the library and doing presentations, and having our staff come to the schools and do presentations. So that's at the sort of heart and core of why we want to be here, and why we want to continue to build this relationship. But having the facility be built there, the outdoor center, for us, programs revolve around the outdoors, but having emergency shelter space is critically important, and having amenities that we can partner with are really important. So the thing I love most is that we can walk out the back doors or side doors, the many doors of the educational space, and be immediately on the trails that lead to this diverse ecological area where we've got fields and forests and beaver ponds and all kinds of wildlife viewing opportunities right at our doorstep. So it's amazing to have that sort of close proximity to so many diverse habitats. To add onto that, the way the building's being built, we've got sort of the indoors, outdoors interface is sort of built into the design. So the back wall, if you want to call it that, faces the mountain. So the mountain is framed, and there's that whole patio space outside where we imagine a lot of programming for the adults and families would happen, or at least begin right there. So the outdoors is part of the learning space from the moment you begin the program, and then you'll launch out into the field to go search for the beavers in their actual habitat. In terms of the shared estates vision and that connection, so we had our one ability to be in the community when we had school and library to go to. We had an outdoor center that adds this whole nother layer that brings us to the Glen and makes that sort of the hub. So we hope to switch our school field trips from happening at Pleasant Valley, where they currently do, to happening at the Glen, because there's no better site and there's no better thing than for the young people of this community to have that connection to their local, best habitat opportunity. With the building of the shared estates facilities, that brings a whole different audience and a year-round audience in scale. It's not just the local community, which has a finite size to it. It's a whole visiting population from throughout the state of Massachusetts and probably from throughout the country, and probably from throughout the other parts of the world even. And to have those work in conjunction with our programming will really be able for us to balance the sort of revenue generating type programs that can happen with an audience that's coming to a beautiful facility like that offers great amenities, in combination with programs like our work in the schools, which are almost entirely grant funded, or our library programs, which are minimally funded by small grants. So hopefully that gives you a picture of the synergy between the facilities and the programming we hope to have happen there.
Yes, thank you.
And I would add to that we're really excited about the layout of the facility and the thought that went into it, because as Dale alluded to, it's a really welcoming site. You walk up, you have the mountain behind you, it's absolutely gorgeous. But the fact that it's going to have an outdoor rec provider, it's going to have a food provider, and Mass Audubon providing the conservation and environmental education, it's a really welcoming building. There's an opportunity to put interpretive educational exhibits inside that we can partner with helping to develop, which we are also very excited about. The whole way it's laid out, where you can go in and sit down by a fire. It's a very welcoming facility, and the opportunity to partner with those other vendors is something that really excites Mass Audubon. Being able to work with that outdoor rec provider to provide snowshoeing and cross-country skiing or mountain biking with environmental education attached to that outdoor recreation is something that's really appealing to us. Being able to go out on an all-day hike and have that food vendor providing that lunch and those snacks to that group is something that's really exciting. Working with the campground and all those campers and those families coming in, to providing exceptional programming for those families coming in, along with others that are coming for day trips to the Glen, is something that is just really will work well with Mass Audubon. And the way the building is laid out and how inviting it is helps set that stage. So I commend the town of Adams with how much work and thought they went into the design of that building.
Thank you. So I guess I have more of a comment about what I find exciting about your proposal. I'm probably a 2 to 3 season Glen user. You won't see me there in the winter right now. Although my husband's tried so hard to get me to cross-country ski, it is not something I'm comfortable or good at, so we don't do that. I don't do that. But what excites me is that you touched upon all of the things that I look for outdoor activities. So an education about what I'm going to experience, what I am seeing, knowing a little bit more about my backyard is always important to me, because I'm I'm a big believer in education as a product of many educators in my family. But I also need amenities because I like that, and I like to have the comfortable things in my life. Even when I'm out fishing, hiking, kayaking, or biking, I still like to know that those things are nearby and that I can access them. And what I have loved about the Glen project since being introduced to it is really making sure that the outdoors is accessible to everyone, right? So your proposals coming in and talking about getting other audiences involved in the outdoors and making it accessible for those. I loved, the piece that you talked about, the all-person trails, and I know that you have 16 in the state, and could we have more, but I am always looking for ways that we can involve everyone in the outdoors, because there really is something for every single person to be doing up at the Glen, and I just really felt like your proposal speaks to that, and we'll talk to all of those various audiences. So thank you for submitting a proposal. And yeah, I didn't really have a question, just more, I guess, a comment and gratitude for your work.
Thank you.
But I will ask it. I know, John, you said you might have other questions.
Just one
Joe
more,
said too.
Comment too. Adams has been on a long road to get here, as you probably know. And I've lived in the town my entire life, and I've seen all the phases, well, as far back as the 70s, I would say, but it's probably prior to that. And, we've been offered a lot, and a lot of the projects didn't come through. So there's emotions involved, of course, over the years. But over the last 12 years since I've been on this board, working with Donna Season, with her agreement with the state for the site up there and the visions that she has had, there's been a few phases. And the first phase, of course, was always to get the funding to build the facility. And then in Mass Audubon, in our discussions over the last 12 years, has always been part of our discussion. That was hopefully, that was not a given, but that was we have to have Mass Audubon Society as part of this, would be one of the phases that we need to accomplish. So yes, we did receive the funding. The building is nearing completion. It's a beautiful building. We're excited. The town of Adams should be excited about this. It is happening. I know we've been through a lot. I've been there, but this is happening. And we are progressing, and a lot of good people working this, and Donna's still here to see it through. But Mass Audubon Society has always been part of the discussion, and so very excited about the building, but very excited about having you and your group, your association, part of it, and working with us to make this Adams is success. And we've been waiting a long time, and it's starting to happen. So thank you for being part of this journey.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a few more comments. First of all, I want to go back to what Renee wrote, and his serious threats were recreational development and overuse, and then minor threats. He said non-native invasive plants, ecological succession, water and air pollution. No longer are they minor threats. They're pretty much major threats right now, particularly right outside of the building. There's a lot of invasives there, with mustard seed and, the vines, olive branch going, and, so I think that that's something that educationally needs to be taken care of, at least around the building, to, let people know that we don't want these here, because they're certainly hurt ecological systems. Also, our forests are in somewhat of a decline with the emerald ash borer and a lot of diseases and funguses within spruce, blisters in your beaches and things. And because I spend a lot of time in the woods. I spend more time in the woods now than when I worked for 25 years on Greylock. I do an awful lot of hiking. And one of my concerns is on the eastern flank of Mount Greylock, the trails are in horrendous condition going to the summit. They're down to bedrock, a lot of places because there's gully, there's no room for water barges to usher the water off. And that's something that I don't know what can be done. It's certainly state property. I don't think state has the will, or maybe not the will, that shouldn't be the word, but the number of people necessary to correct these problems. They're hard problems to correct. And there's no doubt in my mind with the advent of the Greylock Glen, there's going to be more people that are hiking. Another thing, too, that makes this development a lot different than many is that its location. It's right in the center of a town, and you have North Adams, you have Pittsfield, so your drawing is good, but a lot of people that come up are the kind of people that want to say, oh, I want to see what's going on up there. It's like the old timers like me, the people from Adams, you're up there and you can see them driving by. They just want to look in and see what is going on. So that may affect our infrastructure in some respect because the roads leading to the Glen are very narrow. They're not passable for two cars when cars are parked on the sides of the road. It's very narrow, and depending on the amount of traffic, then there could be some problems with that. But all in all, I have to say, as an individual who's lived here my whole life, that I've fought this tooth and nail. I used to come, Andy can remember, Andy Nuciforo, he was the state senator at the time. And I'd come in and my department was overseeing it. And I'd speak as a private individual and say, this shouldn't go up at Greylock because it's going to harm the character of it. These 300 houses and condominiums. And I don't think the people that I was employed for liked it because I was talking against them, but in a civil and educated manner. So I have a long history with this. I go back just as far as Donna has with this project, and I voiced my opinion at every turn when I felt it wasn't the right thing. I like what I see now, but I still think there's a lot of edges that need to be molded because there's still going to be impacts, and I don't think you really can tell the impacts until you're up and running. And I know that your group has a deep heart for the environment, and I know that, at least I think I know that, your heart's there and you'll do what you can to make sure it's viable, but also viable that it's environmentally sound and sensitive for that site because that belongs to everyone. So I'll certainly be voting on your behalf to be those that will be running the building, the educational center. And I'm hoping that you, as you had mentioned, that you educate children. I'd like to see the colleges come up. I'd like to see a lot of a think tank almost, because that's what needs to be done. We have some of the brightest students. I'm not just saying Williams College, MCLA, BCC, and they all have pretty vigorous programs in environmental. So,
And many of our staff and interns have come through MCLA, BCC, and Williams College.
yep. Right. Okay, well, I'm not going to belabor much longer, but once again, I'm hoping that, this works out. I'm still tepid in some respects because the environment's important to me, and I just know the area well, and it's sensitive in many ways. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Joe.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the selection of Mass Audubon as the environmental education provider for the Greylock Glen Outdoor Center per their proposal in response to RFP number 23-007, and to authorize the town administrator and special counsel to act as negotiators for the town.
I have a motion by Member Duval. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Second by Member Rosenberg. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just have a question.
Certainly.
Who's the special counsel to act as negotiators for the town?
Attorney Saban,
Okay?
Attorney Jay Saban is
Yep.
here.
wave to everybody over there.
I was like,
Yep.
Joe wanted to make sure he knew who it was. Thank you.
And to add on to Joe's question, the negotiations that will take part will be the lease agreement. Is that the next step? What is the
So-
next step to
so-
make this all happen?
So it's a great question, John. So again, we learned our lesson from a year ago, and we're going to be very deliberate in explaining to everybody what these steps are. We're dealing with public property. It is real estate. As such, this had to be a competitive process. Mass Audubon was the respondent. We heard their presentation tonight. The board has now voted to name Mass Audubon as the educational programming provider. However, this was the fun part. This was everything that Mass Audubon wants to do. This is everything that we want to envision. But now we have to talk a little bit more about how is that going to look. And that is the next step, and that is what the sublease agreement will be. Very similar to what is happening tonight with shared estates. Before anybody can begin operating, before anybody can begin to spend money, and there has to be a very clear lease agreement between the operator and the landlord. This happens all over the place. Just so happens that as a municipality, we talk about it in a public forum. However, we're allowed to do so in executive session, because if this should fall apart and another operator comes in, those terms that we discuss cannot be made public. So the next step is, with the board's vote, myself, Donna, Community Development Department, our anticipated executive director of the Glen, and Attorney Saban will get together. We'll go over what that lease looks like. We've already had a little bit of a conversation at one point during the exploratory process as to what we think that might look like, to make sure that we would have common ground. We do. From there, once we come up with a document that both Mass Audubon and the town negotiating team likes, we would do then what we're doing tonight with shared estates, which is we come back to the board with that lease. Everybody talks about it, looks at it, make sure everybody's happy with it, and then vote to approve it. We sign it, and then when we get the occupancy permit and Mass Audubon's ready to go, they would operate.
So last question is,
Anything to add, Attorney Saban? You seem to be checking off the list as he was going,
They'll
so
double check me if I misspeak. We've worked together long enough now.
just checking. I'm sorry, John, continue.
no problem. So that's, when we do these leases, that's the point where the public will have an opportunity
When you vote on the
to
lease,
lease.
it's the purview of the Board of Selectmen in order to negotiate for the use of the land, but the board can always take public comment.
Okay, that's when we decide on what's really going to happen there, right? And the lease amount of the funding we're going to receive as a community and all
Yes.
that. So it's all detailed there. Okay.
Well, they'll have a staffing plan.
Right.
I mean, we're gonna talk nuts and bolts. I mean, if people wanna know what we talk about, it's gonna end up being what hours of the building is staffed, what days of the week is the building is staffed, how is the reservation system gonna work, what is the room usage schedule gonna work? We know when people see that building and see that space, they are going to want to use that space as well. So will Mass Audubon need the space the entire time? Or are there going to be provisions where Mass Audubon can take their materials, lock them up safely, and then the town's going to allow for some revenue generation by allowing those rooms to be used by other parties? All of that stuff needs to be worked out. This is a building block process. As Joe mentioned and as other people have mentioned, this has never been done before. We don't know what we don't know yet. So we're taking this one step at a time, and we're going to be flexible because it's a dynamic situation. We're going to get up there and we're going to start to execute a plan that we thought was well thought out and well worked. We may realize this isn't working. We're going to restart. So we need to make sure that the lease agreements provide for all of that. And also, at the end of the day, it costs Mass Audubon money to go up there and begin offering programming. At the same time as Mass Audubon will have costs, the town of Adams is going to have some costs to do this. So we have to find a fine balance. This is a project that no other municipal, local government, probably in the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts, is doing. This is all new. This is novel. We are doing something that local government normally doesn't do. But we still have to follow procurement. We still have to follow legal guidelines in terms of how we lease out public property. But Mass Audubon, this isn't going to be their first rodeo using other people's property. Attorney Saban, I don't want to, he hasn't sent us a bill yet necessarily, but Attorney Saban is an excellent attorney. He is well experienced in commercial leases. I don't anticipate any problems. But the town of Adams will make sure our Ts are crossed, our Is are dotted, and that Mass Audubon has a fair shake in order to get up there and get going. And, you know, what year 1, year 2, year 3 looks like probably won't be the same as what year 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 look like. Tell everybody that right now.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. And thank you. And welcome.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you all.
I like hearing applause. That's good. Oh, all right. And I also have a copy of the presentation that I did not write on that people can take with them if they wanted. All right, so that brings us to announcements and good of the order. Joe?
I haven't had much time to think yet, so if I can think of something before it's over, I'll come back. I wasn't giving that any thought.
Okay, Howard?
Just other than wishing everybody a happy new year, there's nothing on my plate right now.
John?
And I have nothing, no meetings attended over the holiday stretch, so nothing to add.
Okay. That'll bring us to executive session. I am asking the board to go into an executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, for reason number 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. As we discussed, we would be reviewing the development agreement and sublease agreement with Shared Estates Asset Fund for the campground development in Greylock Glen. Their representatives are present. I will note that we do have an agenda item on our agenda for when we come out of executive session. If the board feels comfortable after the discussion of the lease, that the board could then approve or take action on the development agreement. So I would need a motion to go into executive session, and I just ask that you state the reason and that you also say that we will come back out into open session as part of your motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to go into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 21-6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. On the agenda A, review development agreement and sublease agreement with Shared Estates Asset Fund, SEAF, for campground development of Greylock Glen. Coming out of executive session, the board will return to the agenda to determine if a vote will be taken to approve the agreement or not.
Okay. I have a motion by Member Duval. Do I have a second?
Second it.
Second by Member Rosenberg. This is a roll call vote.
May I just ask
oh,
a
sorry.
question for clarification for people that are listening before we go in? Could you explain reason 6? You did a little bit about what that encompasses. To consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, so people understand why we're going in.
Sure. So the town of Adams is, in technicality, the landlord for the Greylock Glen. The town of Adams holds a lease from the fee owner, which is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As such, our master agreement with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts allows the town of Adams to sublease sections of the Greylock Glen for the purposes of economic development following a master plan that was approved by the town of Adams, I believe, in 2012. So what is happening tonight is the town of Adams has to negotiate a sublease for the development of a certain section of property to be created as a campground, however one defines that. That is the purpose of that meeting tonight. Last December, the Board of Selectmen approved approved Shared Estates as the developer of the campground as part of the master vision for the Greylock Glen development. People remember there were 2 respondents to that. Shared Estates was moved forward and made recommended to that. Shared Estates took January, February, and March in order to frankly address a lot of questions coming from the public. And beginning in the April-May range, we began negotiating with Shared Estates to formulate what the legal guidelines are, guardrails, roadmap, et cetera, for the eventual development. The development agreement and the ground sublease does not address number of campsites, does not address the total number of sites that will be built upon in a certain way. This deals with timelines, and it deals with what the economic development incentives are for the town of Adams, consistent with the mandate that the town develop the Glen. That's what this is. So the questions that will be answered, or the questions that Ms. Scully asked, will be answered by this agreement. However, we cannot discuss the agreement until this board has had an opportunity to discuss it with its legal counsel, as well as the other party here, to make sure that everyone is happy. This is a one-time shot for the town of Adams, and under no circumstances will the town of Adams ruin this opportunity for us. We have waited far too long. So tonight, we have spent over 6 months negotiating this back and forth. We've had holidays, we have had vacations. Mr. Deuce is a busy guy, international travel. This is a complicated agreement. We also brought on Attorney Saban. Attorney Don Dubendorf had been the Greylock Glen counsel for the town for quite some time and brought us all up to a certain point. Then Don decided to retire, and then the money came to build Greylock Glen, and Don conveniently said, I'm gonna retire. Donna wanted to say the same thing too. Donna stayed. I twisted her arm a little harder, but Attorney Saban was gracious enough to take the role. So Attorney Saban needed some time in order to refamiliarize himself with the myriad of legal documents, to the point where he spent hours getting back up to speed, because this is a legal agreement upon legal agreement. So this is really a great moment for us tonight. And Joe, I appreciate the question, because it's important that I think people understand that this is not necessarily out of the ordinary. It is out of the ordinary for the town of Adams. And doing this in executive session is not a way to avoid public scrutiny or sunshine or the limelight. This is a way to protect the legal interests of the town of Adams. And in due time, consistent with Massachusetts law, we will make this known to the public and all of your questions will be answered. But this is essentially a landlord and a tenant tonight talking about what is this going to look like. The opportunity for planning board review, consistent with the master permits, is still in place. You will hear about that eventually, that Shared Estates still has to go to the planning board for site plan approval, and they still have to go to the Conservation Commission. None of that has changed. However, what this will do is get them on the path in order to be able to go to investors and say, we have a legal agreement to develop this campground. They have the ability to start spending engineering and design money to further that design, which a lot of people are thirsty for. Trail users are thirsty to know. The snowmobilers are thirsty to know. General users of the Greylock Glen are thirsty to know. And frankly, people that want to stay up there in an Airstream or in a cabin are very thirsty to know when they can book it. So this gives us now that roadmap to be able to say, this is what's happening. We're asked all the time, what's happening at the Glen? Well, the Outdoor Center speaks for itself. Go up there and see it. But projects like this, they start very quietly in the background. That's what this is. That's why we have executive session. The board will have the opportunity to ask their lawyer all the questions they want, because we cannot have 5 individuals negotiating with one lawyer, negotiating with another party. So the town administrator and staff perform that function. Once they have that opportunity tonight to ask the lawyer all the questions, and again, everyone's happy with that, the open session item will end up being either the board approves it and instructs town council, Jay Saban, and myself to go forward with signing the documents, and then allow Shared Estates to move forward beyond that. If they choose not to, then it could be set up for another date. It could be a few items. They may want more time to think stuff through. That's the roadmap that we're doing. But if we don't start now, we'll continue to talk about Greylock Glen development for another 50 years. So I know that that was probably far more long-winded than what Joe wanted, but I do feel it's important that we set the stage and explain to everybody why we're doing what we're doing.
Okay,
Very good.
thank you. So roll call vote. Member Novak?
Yes?
Member Rosenberg?
Yes.
Member Hoyt is a yes, and Member Duval?
Yes.
All right, so we will go into executive session. I'm going to ask for 6 minutes before we come back, so that'll be about 7:16.